In the corporate world, our smartphones are way more than just phones, right? They're endpoints, they're where our data lives, and honestly, they're a huge target for attackers. So the choice between Android and iOS, it's become one of the most critical security decisions any company can make. Let's really dive into what that choice means. Now, if you're a security professional, you know this isn't just some hypothetical question. The core philosophies of these two platforms create fundamentally different risks. Choosing one isn't just about what features your team likes, it's a core piece of your risk management strategy. All right, here's how we're going to break this all down. First, we'll hit the core dilemma, that big philosophical divide. Then we'll look at the technical architecture, a couple of key security mechanisms, the real-world vulnerabilities that pop up because of those designs, and finally, how you can build a solid risk management strategy around your choice. Okay, let's start with the big one. Everything, and I mean everything, we're about to discuss comes from this single fundamental conflict and how these two systems were designed, the classic trade-off between open source flexibility and a closed, tightly controlled ecosystem. So on one side, you've got Android. Its open source DNA gives you incredible flexibility. You can customize it, you can install apps from pretty much anywhere, but that wide open landscape naturally creates a much larger attack surface. On the other side, you've got Apple's iOS, which is basically a fortress. It's a walled garden where Apple controls every single way in and out, and they prioritize security, sometimes even over functionality. And here's a perfect example of that trade-off in action. You take something like JIT, or just-in-time compilation. It's super important for things like high-performance apps or gaming emulators. Android, it allows it. It embraces that flexibility. Apple, on the other hand, blocks it on a standard iPhone. Why? Because they see it as a potential security risk. That single decision tells you everything you need to know about Apple's security-first mindset, even if it limits what the device can actually do. So let's peel back the next layer and see how these different philosophies are actually built into the code and the entire ecosystem of each platform. This table really lays out the whole story. With Android, you see open at every single level, an open source kernel, multiple app stores, and code signing that's optional in some cases. The result? A mostly automated app review process. And, this is a big one, security updates that often get delayed because they have to go through the device manufacturers first. Now, flip that for iOS. It's closed at every step. Closed source kernel, one app store, mandatory code signing for everything, and a ton of human review. The payoff is uniform security updates that get pushed to every compatible device all at the same time. Visually, this is the control point that matters most. For Android, yeah, the Google Play Store is the main entrance, but it is not the only entrance. For iOS, the App Store is it. That's the one and only gateway. For a security team, that difference is just massive. It's the difference between guarding one door and guarding a dozen. All right, let's get a bit more technical now. Two of the absolute most critical tools protecting your corporate data are sandboxing and code signing, and how each platform handles them tells you a whole lot about what they really care about. The easiest way to think about sandboxing is to imagine putting every single app into its own sealed room. It has everything it needs to work inside that room, but it can't see, hear, or touch any of the apps in the other rooms. That containment is absolutely fundamental to modern security. Now, both platforms use sandboxing. They have to, but their approach is a little different. Android uses a really powerful sandbox that's reinforced by something called SE Linux. iOS, though, takes it a step further. It forces an even stricter, universally mandatory sandbox on every single third-party app, no exceptions. This severely limits what an app can do or access outside of its own little box. Okay, so what's code signing? Think of it like the tamper-proof seal on a product you buy at the store. It's a digital signature that basically says, yes, this app is really from this developer, and I guarantee nobody has messed with it. It is a foundational layer of trust. And here we go. This is a mission-critical difference. Apps on the Google Play Store? Yes, they have to be signed. But Android lets users sideload apps from outside the official store, and for those, signing is optional. This is a huge vector for malware. On iOS, there are 0 exceptions. If the code is not signed with a valid certificate from Apple, the OS simply will not run it. End of story. So we've gone through the theory and the tech. Let's talk about the real-world consequences. How do these design decisions actually translate into risks that you as a security pro have to manage every day? For Android, the single biggest security problem isn't some fancy new exploit. It's a systemic issue that's born directly from its open nature, and that issue is fragmentation. So what does fragmentation actually mean for your security? It means you have dozens of manufacturers, hundreds of different phone models, all running slightly different takes on Android. This leads to inconsistent data encryption standards across all your company's devices. It means critical security patches from Google might not hit your devices for months. And it creates this whole ecosystem where unofficial app stores can exist, with one source finding over 2 million malware-infected apps just waiting to be downloaded. Now let's talk about iOS. If the operating system itself is a fortress, where's the weak point? Well, attackers don't bother trying to knock down the walls. They focus on attacking the supply chain, the trusted pieces of software and distribution channels that are allowed to come inside the gate. An app itself might seem secure, but what about the parts it's built from? A lot of apps use third-party kits, or SDKs, for certain features. And we've seen huge data breaches happen because of a vulnerability in a trusted SDK from a company like Facebook. But for corporate security, the even bigger issue is the enterprise app loophole. When you distribute your own company apps internally with a mobile device management platform, they completely bypass Apple's rigorous App Store review. And that means you are now the one responsible for checking that code, creating a potential blind spot right inside what's supposed to be a secure ecosystem. Okay, this brings us to the final and I think most important section. The goal here isn't to declare one platform the winner. It's to help you figure out which platform's risks are more manageable for your organization. This quote from a recent research paper just hits the nail on the head. There is no simple, one-size-fits-all answer. The winner totally depends on your threat model, who your users are, and your ability to manage very specific kinds of risk. Making the right choice really boils down to asking the right questions. Start with your threat model. What exactly are you protecting? Then look at your users. Are they likely to get tricked into installing something they shouldn't? Next, think about control. Do you need the deep customization that Android offers, or the strict uniform control of iOS? And finally, look at your apps. If you're building and deploying your own enterprise apps, your internal review process is what really matters, no matter which platform you're on. Ultimately, it all comes down to this one single strategic question. Are you better set up to handle the risks of a fragmented, open system where you have more flexibility but way less uniformity? Or are you better prepared to manage the supply chain risks of a closed ecosystem where the walls are high, but a threat can be Trojan horsed right through the front door via a trusted partner? The answer to that question is what will define your mobile security posture for years to come.